County Commissioners for Monday, November 16th. The record reflected is 9:04, and we have all three commissioners present. We'll first deal with CARES Act funding.
Audio unsilenced.
First one to present is Pat Farrell. Pat, are you on the line? See Pat.
There he is.
There he is.
There he is.
There he is.
There he is. There he is. There he is. There he is.
Do that again, Jerry.
It's almost like you're trying to rap, Jerry.
Hello?
Yep. Bear with us, Pat. We're having an IT problem.
Rod Sterling is coming back.
All right.
Can you?
You're good.
Okay, Pat, you're on.
I'm on, okay. Hey, there we are. Can you hear me?
Hi, Pat.
Hi, guys. Okay, so yeah, this morning I have a couple of requests. The first one is from Tom Konis, basically. He missed the second round of requests I sent out to department heads to ask for additional laptops, and he is now requesting an additional 32 laptops to enable all of his employees to work remotely from home. So that would be in addition to the funding I received for the other 567 laptops.
And a price to that?
$54,000.
Okay.
Okay. Now the second request, it's a large request, but it does address a very critical deficiency in our cyber recovery strategy. And yep, there's the document there. Thank you. So what we're asking here is to purchase it's a cybersecurity software solution from Dell called Cyber Recovery Vault. And in a nutshell, with our increased teleworker presence, you know, we're going to have 600 plus teleworkers out there on the internet. Our attack surface is spread out. You know, we used to, you know, existing teleworker internet connections, unsecured home wireless networks, and unpatched computers are placing the county network at an increased risk of ransomware and malware attack. And as they say in the industry, it's not if, but when we're going to get hit by one of these nasty attacks. So this Dell solution, it's a very unique solution that will give us the ability to recover from any cyber attack without data loss and without paying a ransom. And as you can see some of the stats here, you know, ransomware costs are forecast to reach 20 billion by 2021. It's a global epidemic, as we all know. So if you go to the second page of this document, is that, yeah, there we are. So this is kind of small, but a little technology background here. Our current backup strategy is what we call disk to disk to disk. So we use a product called Commvault to back up all the county's file servers data to a storage array here in the IT building. And then we replicate that out to the combined communication building. And then we have a third copy of that we replicate out to the backup 911 center out in Meade. So we essentially have three copies of our production data, and we keep that for 6 months. Recent recommendations from the Secretary of State's office and Homeland Security have us kind of going full circle and going back to what we used to do, which is tape backup, to have a true offline copy of our network backup. However, tape is not a perfect solution, because if you back up corrupt data or you back up encrypted data and write that to tape, you run the possibility of reintroducing that ransomware into the environment if you have to restore from that platform. And tape restores are also very slow. So in researching that, we came across this solution here from Dell. We had some conversations and discussions and sizing meetings with them over the last week or so. And it's a great solution. What it does is it creates a true air-gapped copy, air-gapped meaning that it's disconnected from the production county network. So it creates a copy of our Commvault backups in this cybersecurity vault, if you will. And the connection between the vault and the Commvault servers is only open while a backup is occurring. So if the bad guys get onto our network and start encrypting data, the data that's in this vault is inaccessible to them. Dell ensures us that of the customers that have deployed this solution on their network, there's not a single one that has not been able to recover the data and recover from a ransomware event in a timely fashion. There's several other state agencies that are using the solution, Clark County, Lane County. There's some school districts, King County's looking into it, and the Office of Financial Management, OFM, is also looking into it. So what this is, it's kind of it's like the ransomware doomsday recovery solution, if you will. So we get the bad actors on our network, they encrypt files, they figure out how to get to our backups, and they encrypt our backups as well. This is the last place we would go to recover that data. It would give us assurance that in the event of a massive ransomware attack, we can recover our data without paying ransom, no matter what. Any questions so far?
Nope.
The you know, the solution, I don't know if you're looking at the cost there, it's significant. It's almost $1.2 million, but that pays for the whole platform, the software, the hardware, and covers maintenance for 5 years. And it's really going to let, I think, everybody in leadership at the county sleep better, knowing that we can recover from any cyber attack without data loss and without paying ransom. Back in May, I don't know if you heard this, but the Post Falls Police Department was hit with a nasty ransomware attack. And this is just a small police department. And they were, the bad actors demanded $1 million ransom from them. And through negotiations, they negotiated it down to $800,000. And it was covered by their cyber insurance, cyber security insurance that they had, but they were offline and down for days, if not weeks. They didn't fully disclose the data to us or what the outcome of the event was, but it was significant. And this happens over and over again. We've all heard of all these occurrences that go around, not only in our state, but across the nation. And as we grow our teleworker workforce, I think this becomes even more critical to have a solution like this in place.
Okay. Any questions for Pat? All right. Seeing none, then the chair's looking for direction.
Actually, I'm gonna just
Oh, Mary, go ahead.
ask more questions. Okay, sorry, Pat, how much was this again? I guess, because you're kind of doing a couple of asks, so I just want to try to make sure I understand. One's for additional laptops for the assessor's office.
That's 54.
Yeah, that's $54,000. And this is just under 1.2 million with tax.
And have you talked to Carrie? Is this CARES eligible?
Yes, I have. And yes, it is.
Okay.
Commissioner, this is Carrie. Pat and I spoke this morning. I took a look at this. But for COVID, we wouldn't have this many people on teleworking. And Pat may be able to talk about the numbers that we have currently compared to where we were before we all went home to work. So Pat, you might want to just give a quick update on that.
Well, yeah, before COVID, we've had probably half a dozen teleworkers, if that. And, you know, now we're going to have just about 600. There may be more, but we've purchased 567 laptops plus the additional 32 that Tom Konis is requesting, puts us at 599, call it 600. So it's significant.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to just double check on that since, I mean, I think this just came to me this morning, so I just wanted to kind of ask those questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kearns.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize up to $54,000 for the purchase of the additional laptops for the county assessor's office as requested by Assessor Tom Konis.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the dispersion of CARES Act dollars up to the amount of $1.2 million for the cybersecurity proposal for remote workers and constituents as presented today by Pat Farrell.
I'll second that.
And got a motion and a second. Any additional conversation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, commissioners.
Then, Mr. Larry Crowder, are you with us? Yes, there you are.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning, sir. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I've been working with Carrie Griddle, who I want to say thank you to for all of her hard work as a member of the team to put together a proposal for your consideration this morning to provide CARES Act funding for a number of expenses that we have incurred here at the Spokane International Airport related directly to the COVID-19 pandemic, and providing materials in order to carry out all of the mandates that have been assigned to us either through local or state or federal pandemic guidance. There is a list that has been provided in the written materials. I'm happy to answer any questions with regard to any of those specific items, but would ask for your consideration and approval, with the total amount, of course, is $78,879.73.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Crowder?
I'll just double check. So I know you were working with Carrie on this, and so ask Carrie to give the, she thinks it's all good, and then we're good.
So just to help to explain the procedure, Carrie and I talk every Wednesday or Thursday and go through and develop which ones are ready to come forward and which ones aren't. And so if she hasn't blessed it, it doesn't end up on our schedule. So every one of the requests are put together by Carrie to submit to us for our consideration. So just wanted to give you that background and stuff. So Mr. Kearns.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the expenditure of CARES dollars up to $79,000 to accommodate COVID-related expenses by Spokane International Airport as presented by Larry Crowder.
I will second that motion.
Good. I've got a motion. Go ahead.
I guess, but Commissioner French, I guess I would like to, I know you may have, gone through that process. And I think the rest of us like to talk to Carrie to make sure we've done this on several things. It's nothing against the airport. I just was asking if this had all gone through, and for Carrie to just give me a confirmation of that. But I have no problem with doing this for the airport. So I don't understand why you were kind of.
All I was trying to do is explain the process that Carrie and I go through to make sure that everything that comes to the board, regardless of whether it's the airport or anybody else, it doesn't really matter, just to reassure you that the list of applicants that appear on our agenda appear because Carrie put them there. I don't put anything on the agenda unless Carrie has blessed it and stuff. So I just wanted to help you know that that's the process that Carrie and I go through to make sure that everything has been vetted through her before it gets to us. So that's the only thing I'm trying to explain. It had nothing to do with the airport's application, just to try and reassure you that all of these app requests, Carrie has developed this list and said, we're ready to move forward on these. That's the only purpose for the comment.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect, motion passed unanimously then.
Thank you, commissioners. Just in response to Commissioner CUNY's point that she made regarding our work with Carrie, I would just reinforce that this was a result of multiple conversations between myself and Carrie, who was able to provide the guidance to make sure that all the eligibility criteria was in fact met. So again, thank you, commissioners. Really appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder. Okay, so next item is Charlene Osbach with EWU.
She's not on yet, and then I still have to reach out to both Charlene and Carol, but she
David Beerwright on from Eastern.
Yeah, he's the Eastern.
Yeah, he's the Eastern. So go ahead and put David on.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning, sir.
Thank you so much for giving us the time. And I want to echo what's been said so many times this morning. Carrie is an amazing asset to the county and to the region, and has been so helpful in us getting together what fits and what doesn't fit. So I want to thank you for that. I won't read this to you. Our Eastern Washington University request comes in 4 basic buckets: sanitation, custodial, and service support. That's been really important as we work with the health district. We have 2 dorms, Streeter and Dryden, that are sometimes have 1 or 2 or 7 people, but they all have to be cleaned, and so that's an additional expense. Our increased student study spaces, we have a lot of students that are from rural areas, and you hear a lot about the digital divide. This gives students a chance to come to campus, but we need some spaces that are large enough that they're able to socially distance and get cleaning in between time. Our food pantry support, as you can imagine, we have some food insecurities for some of our student body, and so that's an important piece. And then the NCAA, along with the Big Sky Conference, has put together COVID testing for our athletic program. And we're hoping to have our basketball program running in later this month, early December. Football is scheduled to start next March. And so in order to do these things successfully, these are the expenses that have been incurred. I appreciate your kind consideration.
Okay, thanks, David. Any comments or questions for David? Very good. So, Commissioner Kearns.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the dispersion of CARES Act funding up to the amount of $315,000 to accommodate the CARES Act, or to accommodate the COVID-related expenses for Eastern Washington University, as described by David Beerwright.
I will second that.
I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yuri.
Hey, it's great to see you. Look forward to seeing you in 3D again sometime.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Carol Welts, have you joined us?
Spinning along here.
She's not there yet. So
we could move.
And I want you to contact Ariane, see if she can get on.
You can, yes. And some of these other folks, if we can contact them, because we're moving through this pretty quick.
Well, I want to try and be respectful of the 11 o'clock commitment and stuff. So
we're doing good. Carrie, are you on the line?
I'm here.
We could move into the letter that has been requested for the Salvation Army.
Yeah, I think that would probably be good until Carol gets on so we can get this issue resolved. So commissioners, I was contacted by the Salvation Army recently. They had a meeting with their district office. This is with regards to the purchase of West 55 Mission Avenue in Spokane. They met in their district office, and they have the contract is, they reviewed that contract and had a couple of issues, not local, but at the district level, that they are requesting that the commissioners or counsel for the commissioners sign a statement saying that the fund payments made with regards to the CARES Act funding for the purchase of this property had no encumbrance on it. And secondly, that the issuance of this funding was not contrary to the U.S. Treasury guidance and also did not violate the Section 601 of the Social Security Act and U.S. Treasury guidance for the use of CARES Act funds. Now, the contract did not contain any encumbrance language in it, as because there is no encumbrance. We have reached out to the Office of Inspector General and found that there is no requirement on the use of CARES Act funding when you purchase real property to have such an encumbrance placed on the property. In addition, when I reached out to the Office of Inspector General, they did give my office some guidance about the use of CARES Act funding for the purchase of real property, and this purchase of 55 West Mission is within that guidance. So they're asking for a letter that you can see on the screen that Mr. Amacio assisted me in coming up with for your review today, and if so inclined, we would be able to sign this and provide it to allow this project to go forward.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie on this? Okay, so then just need a motion.
Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize the signing of an agreement between Spokane County and the Salvation Army in conjunction with the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Funds awards to be signed by the majority of the board at other than open public session, and authorize the use of our stamps.
Second that.
We've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay,
We got Carol on.
so we have
Commissioner Jim Amacio, I think, wants to speak.
Mr. Amacio. Did you have a comment? You're muted.
Can you hear me, Chairman French?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Thank you. I apologize. I wanted to be sure that Commissioner Kern's motion was correct. The motion should have been not to authorize the agreement, I believe, but to authorize the execution of a letter that was presented to the board this morning by Ms. Gridall. Is that correct, Carrie?
Yes, Mr. Amacio, that is correct.
And so if I could suggest, Chairman French, that we could reconsider, if you would, Commissioner Kern's motion, instead of authorizing the execution of an agreement with the Salvation Army, it would authorize the execution of the letter presented by Ms. Gridall this morning by the board or majority of the board at an other than an open meeting.
Okay, so before that, so the first action is to vote to reconsider the motion and stuff. So that has to. That's
Yeah, I'll move that we reconsider the previous motion that was adopted.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. So got a motion to reconsider the previous motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Now, floor is open to a new motion. Commissioner Kearns, would you like Mr. Amacio to state the motion?
That I would appreciate that.
Mr. Amacio, would you please state the motion, please?
Thank you, Chairman French. The motion, Commissioner Kearns, would be that you make a motion to authorize the chairman of the board or a majority of the board to execute the correspondence prepared by Ms. Gridall with respect to the Salvation Army's request in conjunction with their CARES Act agreement.
Yes, I will make a motion to that effect as stated by Jim Amacio.
Thank you, sir.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Amacio, for making sure that we got it right. All right, so now Carol Waltz is joining us. And Carol, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, good morning, commissioners. Thanks for having me. My understanding is that we're just discussing the proposal that we submitted. It was to help people with their unpaid utility bills with a little different slant, with the idea of being able to get the money out quickly. And what it would be is each of the utilities, the 5 utilities in Spokane, would each submit a list of people who are 60 days or more past due on their bill. They would send the list to SNAP, and we would authorize payment and do one payment to each utility. So I spoke with each of the utilities to get an idea on how far behind people were. The original proposal included people who might have received grants before, but this one is cleaned up a little bit and doesn't include that because there's some benefits out there for people who hit certain income levels. So this would be for people who, just a regular everyday guy who, because of COVID, can't pay his bill. It'd be a quick way to get the money out into our community and to serve a lot of people. You know, a couple of things I wasn't clear on is, because there's no way with this proposal for us to double check if anybody else has got any other kind of CARES money. I don't know that there's a way that we could prevent any kind of duplication, except that when we pull the list from the utility, it would say that they hadn't received a benefit in the last year or two, whatever it was decided. And then the households wouldn't be income qualified either, right? So we're going on the assumption that we see that the arrearages with the utility are more than double than they were last year, right? So we're making some assumptions that these are due to COVID and that people are in a bad position. And then, but it'd be a way to get money out, help people quickly, help them get back on their feet. What else about it? What else can I tell you about it? A couple of the concerns I kind of have is that it's such a large amount of money. I kind of worry about SNAP being able to float $5.4 million in a 2-week period, because I think that's how long it'd take us to get the money out. I almost think it'd be better if you guys held the money. We did the work and just kind of subcontracted doing that work for 2 weeks and billed you for the work, and then you guys sent out the money as an alternative. That would slow down. I mean, it would make it so we wouldn't have to do a contract or these other things. We could just do a simple, you know, kind of subcontracting kind of work. Anyway, so that's kind of the idea we've been brewing. So I wasn't quite sure we were gonna, I didn't think we're ending up here already, but here we are. What can I tell you?
Okay, thank you, Carol. So Terry, this is a little unusual from what we've done otherwise. So you want to weigh here and give us your wisdom?
Well, I wouldn't be opposed to, you know, the proposal. However, the contract would have to probably go to SNAP instead of us paying Avista, because I would have to contract with each of the utility companies. And there is a way to get the money out ahead of time. So if that's the concern, Carol, we could address that up front.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that wouldn't burden SNAP with regards to having to have this kind of money out. I guess the question is, you know, I think you could address the issue about whether the money had already been, you know, approved, the quote unquote, like double dipping. That wouldn't occur if the arrears are still out there. Because obviously CARES money hasn't been used to pay the arrears amounts. That would be the only concern there. So I don't really have that issue. Are we talking just about Avista, or what multiple companies are we talking about at this point?
Yeah, we're not just talking about Avista. We're talking about Vera, Inland, Modern, Avista, and City of Cheney. So those are the 5 that serve Spokane County. And so when I spoke with each of them, they gave me an idea of what their arrearages were. Inland had about 400,000, Modern had about 40, Cheney about 30, Vera about 82,000. And then the rest of it is Avista. You know, the Vista is 80% of our utility in Spokane County. So they serve the most. So it's not just the one, it's all of them.
And Carol, did you have an idea about how much difference there was between this year at this time and last year? About,
yeah. You know, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was about double.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was significant enough. Like modern, they don't usually let anybody get behind at all, because if the customer doesn't pay it, then the owner's responsible. So they don't, I mean, they shut people off right away. So, you know, they're carrying 40,000. So each of them said it was about double. You know, for us, I think, you know, when I was talking to Julie Hohenkamp, you know, she's like, you know, Carol, you could sink our organization if they come back later and say it wasn't a qualified thing that we could do. So, you know, that was her concern, just making sure that, you know, this kind of money can be used for this, and that we wouldn't have to do that income qualification. And I think that's a big thing. You know, we've got some stuff for some more low income people, but there's not a lot out there for utility help for people who are there in the middle and who've been really affected. And with us going into this next phase of cutting back, you know, I think we're going to see some more people in trouble.
Carol, I don't, you know, as far as the Treasury guidance, income level has not been a requirement in setting up these proposals. As long as you have a system in place that everybody's treated equally with federal dollars, that's mainly the issue.
Okay. Yeah, so Julia just said to me that, you know, for her, if we did something like this, she'd like a contract to say, you know, doesn't guarantee that hasn't been double, you know, duplicate service somewhere else, because there were some other CARES money out in the community. But if it's just money within its, you know, within its, I don't know what you'd say, within the one that we're doing, probably not a problem, and that households wouldn't have to be income qualified. Those are two things she'd like to see in there, just to kind of protect us. She makes me worried when she says something like, you can sink our ship, Carol. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Cooney.
Yeah, so I guess one of my questions with this is, you know, knowing that CARES dollars have been put out there already for utility assistance. I know some of the cities have done that with their dollars, as well as through our CDBG CARES dollars. We did that at the county level for the county and the valley, City of Spokane Valley. And I know, like I said, I know City of Spokane Valley put money into utility assistance, and so did, I think, City of Spokane. So I guess I'm just, you know, trying to figure out, yeah, I mean, it's kind of that disturbing thing. And then also feeling like, you know, if it's CARES related, because we need to ensure that it's CARES related, that, you know, if historical, it's been, you know, 50% of what it is now, I'd be completely happy with putting 50% in of this dollar amount, but I don't know that I'm comfortable doing the entire dollar amount, you know, when we haven't seen that historically, you know, again, due to care. I mean, because the CARES funding is due to COVID. And so trying to make sure that we're putting that together so we can justify that to funders.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the City of Spokane funding. I know that we did a utility assistance for the City of Spokane Valley. It was about $176,000. And then we have a Spokane County mortgage and utility assistance, which is just over $100,000. So although there's been a little bit of money, it's been very minute in the scheme of things. Not saying it's not been helpful, it has been. So yeah.
I thought it was more through Spokane County. I'd have to go back and look and check with Kathleen, but
yeah, it might be through other agencies. I just know what we've been doing, and I haven't heard of other utility type assistance, but that doesn't mean there isn't. Right.
And then you guys are also handling the rent assistance grant, right?
Yes, we are.
And so how is that going? And I guess seeing that versus seeing, you know.
Yeah, so we've served, the first billing finally came across, it was $250,000. We have found a way for people to apply online, so people are able to access it quickly. They can refer, and we have 9 workers who are taking the referrals and doing the applications. It's a simple application. I think we'll get the money out quickly. So we're really jamming gears on that. You know, it's nice when we can couple other assistance along with it. You know, I think it's always useful when we can do this other kind of assistance.
Yeah, no, agreed. I'm just wondering if, yeah, you'd be able to, you know, kind of the people that are requesting that then be able to, you know, help with
yeah.
So
yeah, with this kind of, there's no way that we could get the money out by the end of December in any other form other than what I'm proposing. At least not that we've thought of. And we've done a lot of brainstorming around this and trying to figure out how we could help. And I cannot come up with another way because it's time consuming, even if they're doing an online application, to get all their documentation from the vendors and do the paperwork. So, so that's a little bit time consuming. This, I believe we could get done in a 2-week span.
So in this would just be paying the utility companies directly for what they say are in arrears.
That's right, 5 checks. 5 checks to the utility, you know, 1 to each. 1 spreadsheet with the payment to each of the households. Yeah, so it'd be, they'd send us a list, you know, after we give them the criteria of who we say is eligible and what they're eligible for, and they'd send us a list of what's owed, and we'd create a billing sheet about what we're going to pay on each, and then that would be what we pay on. It'd be sent back with payment. You know, any other way is you have to touch each one, and there's just not enough time left, right? Even just getting a contract through, you know, I would tell you we probably can't touch it, you know, till the beginning of December, you know, so we need something that's going to go out quickly.
So Carrie, I guess my question to you is, I mean, if it's 5 individual companies, really, is the reality of it. It's not going to individuals, it's going to the companies. I don't know, is that a, you know, should we just contract with them directly? And is that a valid CARES request? I mean, I you know, it's just, I'm just struggling with this. I'm trying to, you know, this is really, you know, trying to think through it. So,
Well, Commissioner, I see, you know, part of this is the program I think that Carol's talking about with the parameters that they're going to put into play here would also be part of that. And the contract would go to SNAP. SNAP would put the program together, but it's more done in a one fell swoop instead of identifying it to each person. But they would definitely have a spreadsheet back from the utility company, I would imagine, that showed the arrears, so that we would have that in our files to show that these households were paid. If we're saying that we're seeing an increase of 50% over last year, you know, there definitely could be an argument that this is CARES related because these people are out of work and, you know, suffering as a result of not being able to pay their utility bills. And I think
50% of it, not 100% of it.
Yeah, I would probably, I think you'd be safe to go to that. If we're showing a 50% increase, we definitely know that that's probably could be tied to CARES related funding on the increase. But I think what Carol's, you know, proposing is, you know, enough that we would have in our, you know, in SNAP's files, you know, to show that this money was used to pay for these individuals. It's not paying the utility companies, but it's actually for the benefit of individuals. And utility programs are certainly allowable under CARES Act funding.
Yeah, and that's the way we do it with our other utilities. Unless there's no other choice, we always pay the utility. The other thing with these is because we don't have any kind of release of information signed with the utility customers, and they don't have that, and that would be time consuming. Those lists would come to us with their account number and their balances owed, but would not include their names. We would not even see their names because we don't have the release to do that, right? So there's not time to contact each one and say, can we have your permission? So that's a way that we could do it without having to gain that permission from. And we did this with LIRAP funding also. At the end of last year, our season runs till the end of September, and we had some COVID LIRAP dollars left. And we pulled a list of people who hadn't been served with it yet and who owed a balance, and we just automatically put a credit on their account. So that's kind of where this came out of. It's something that we did at the end of this last season that seemed to work pretty effectively for helping people and getting the money out.
Any other comments, Mary?
Yeah, I guess I'm just still struggling a little bit. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I just, you know, this is a lot, and trying to think through how all this will really work. And it's just for residential customers. Correct, Carol?
Yes, that's correct.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little concerned doing 100% when we know COVID is probably causing 50% of it. And so that's what I guess I'm just trying to wrap my, think about. And is Vista, they have their programs too to help people that don't, pay their rent, with their, where you can add to your bill and all of that. And so I guess I'm just not sure what they've been doing already.
Right. Yeah, so we have been helping with LIRAP COVID, but this benefit would not go to anybody who had received that benefit, right? So if anybody else had already received a COVID benefit, whether it's LIHEAP or LIRAP or any other kind of COVID benefit, they wouldn't be eligible for this. Now, one of the things we talked about doing was we could even do a tiered approach, which is if you, let's say you owe $500 or less, you get a $300 credit. Or if you owe $1,000 or less, you get $750 credit. Or if you owe $2,000, you could get a $1,500 credit. So you could do a tiered approach too, about based on what people owe, that maybe that accounts for that piece that would have been their regular kind of bill, right? But what we know is that people's even regular bills right now, like your heating bills more than it would have been just because of COVID, because people are home all day and their children are there, doing their school and doing these other things. And so, but you could do a tiered approach. I mean, that's kind of another thing that could be done. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but.
So if we delay a week, Carol, does that, set this back quite a ways, or is that for us to really think through it? And
the longest part of this is getting the contract from the county, and I can never even make a move on anything until I get a contract in hand. That's our agency policy. So that's, I would tell you that I think I could do this work complete in 2 weeks. That's what I believe I can do. That's with my time and 2 to 3 certification workers. I think it'd be buttoned up quick and checks out, right? So I think it can be done quickly. I'd hate to be running it into that last week of December. That's running too close for me.
Right. No, I don't want to do that either.
Things are already keeping me up. I don't want to stay up for this, but if we could get an agreement by the beginning of December and have, the first 2 or 3 weeks that this is taken care of, that would be functional for us.
Commissioner, this is Carrie. I could probably turn a contract if we carried this for a week to get further information. I could probably have a contract to snap by the next day.
Well, and so, I share Mary's concern, especially it relates to the CDBG funding. We've got several $100,000 that is out there with CDBG funds, and we don't know, quite frankly, or at least I don't know exactly what process they use to allocate those funds. And is there an opportunity for double dipping into this situation and stuff? So I'm wondering if this is probably not an item where we want to defer it until next Monday, have Kathleen Torella here and talk about her process and make sure that we're not getting duplicate distributions of these funds, and invite Carol back and let's figure out a process to be able to one, distribute the funds, but also make sure that we're being good stewards and aren't double dipping, or providing an opportunity for people to double dip into the program. What do you think about that, Mary?
Yeah, no, I'd like to have a week just to kind of further, have some discussions on it. And two, I think I'd like to talk to Vista and just see, kind of what their process is on using their dollars and how this is, different than that and ensuring, what the need is. So.
Okay,
I'll
Josh.
be happy to. Sorry.
Josh,
Yeah, no, I think a lot of valid questions have been raised, and I think let's just get answers to those questions first, and then next week bring this back. I certainly have a desire to help these folks out that are struggling, but we need to make sure that that we're doing it the right way, and we don't get cross with the feds and how we're just distributing the dollars. So let's just get those answers, and then we'll move forward in a way that we can next week.
Is there anything you'd like me to do between now and then that would be helpful to you?
I think if I have questions, Carol talk to Carrie and have Carrie kind of work those questions through you. I know for me, just, because we won't be meeting as commissioners, but, that way then we can, but I mean, you kind of know what our thoughts are, I guess, or my thoughts are, and my questions, on this. And so I just, want to do a little bit more due diligence.
Yeah, the only double dipping concern I really have is that there's a kind of a cross when there is, we can see who's received a benefit at the utility right now, at all the utilities, right? So those ones are easy to kick out. But if there's one that we're processing on one of these other programs, so the only active one right now is the Spokane County Utility, Mortgage and Utility Assistance. That's the only one. And on that one, I could, because it's such a smaller amount, $100,000, I could probably just check that spreadsheet. Well, no, I won't have the name, so that won't work.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll teal it up for next Monday and deal with it before we load up a turkey. All right, thank you. So we have time for at least one more before we go into our 10 o'clock levy hearing. And we have, I believe, Lonnie Rash with Spokane Fire District number 8 joining us.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome.
Good, thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to say good morning to you and thank you on behalf of the fire commissioners and the fire chief for being able to present this CARES Act funding opportunity to you. Again, my name is Lonnie Rash, the Assistant Chief. I also have online with us here our Medical Services Officer, Tom Chavez, should you have any particular technical questions. So just very briefly, Fire District 8 provides fire and EMS service to about 25,000 citizens. We provide that EMS and paramedic response out of 4 fire stations to the south of the city of Spokane and Spokane Valley. And that includes those neighborhoods of Moran Prairie, Valley Ford, Micah, Freeman, Morningside, and Saltese. So we run approximately 3,300 calls a year with our 40 full-time, 10 part-time, and about 18 volunteer firefighters. Fire District 8 is respectfully submitting the request for supplies and equipment to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency, which seems not to be going away very soon. These expenditures were incurred due to the public health emergency and not accounted for in our annual budget for 2020. And we do plan to expend these, will be able to expend prior to December 30, 2020. So obviously these requests will help us to provide better service to our citizens. And frankly, it's the only reason the fire service exists, is because we want to provide service to our citizens. And when our responders are provided with the safest and most appropriate equipment to do the job, it increases their confidence, it increases efficiency, and allows us to provide that patient care to our citizens. So we believe that these requests that you'll see are all in line with the authorized purchases or equipment for FEMA reimbursement and CARES Act funding. So there are 5 particular categories. I think these categories you might have seen before, as they're relatively consistent with other fire service agencies who have presented to you before. So request number 1 of the total package would be reimbursement and initial purchases for disposable medical supplies, endotracheal intubation, laryngoscopes, personal protective equipment specifically for fire decks reusable coveralls. And obviously with this starting in March, the district did not account for many of these expenses in our 2020 expense plan. And I believe it will be challenging in the future. Existing expenses and purchases of new supplies were and will be utilized for COVID-19 or suspected COVID-19 patients. So we're asking for that reimbursement. Specifically, the breakdown of this request is about $32,000 in reimbursement, as well as purchase of additional personal protective equipment needed to carry us into 2021. And one of those items is fire decks coveralls. And I don't know if you've heard of those before, but those are coveralls that provide a superior level of protection, allows us to wash or decontaminate up to 70 75 times before they're taken out of service. We would want to purchase, we've purchased some of those. We'd like to purchase additional, and then as well as all the other PPE that is out there in terms of respirators, masks, gowns, Tyvek suits, all of those items. The second request of this would be to purchase 6 Laerdal patient suction units, their associated accessories and the warranty. And very briefly, those are is that obviously COVID-19 is highly transmissible, particularly during procedures where there's particulate matter that's exhausted or airborne. And when we're doing suctioning with a patient's airway, it's important that that exhaust discharge portal be equipped with a proper filtration. And by utilizing the new suction units, which are equipped with filtration features, that will reduce exposure to our responders. In addition, those current suction units that are in use are certainly not built for the decontamination and sterilization. And so the new units are plastic coated, metal coated, which would allow us to disinfect and clean easier. The request number 3 would be to purchase 10 patient oxygen airway equipment storage bags. The current oxygen airway bags are built with absorbent materials, which allows for contamination, biohazard, and infectious airborne particulates to live there. And because of that, we're not able to disinfect them as well as we would like. And the requested equipment storage bags are made of more of a nylon or urethane coating, which significantly reduces that absorption, and that can be more easily disinfected and sanitized. Request number 4, and I think that you've seen this, and I think it certainly is the future of what we're going to see in terms of equipment out there, but it's a purchase of 6 Lucas mechanical CPR devices. And the Lucas mechanical CPR device provides continuous high-quality mechanical compressions while doing CPR. So currently, when we do patient resuscitation, there are numerous medical responders who have to work in or near the patient and amongst themselves. And during those resuscitation efforts, it's essential for providers to protect themselves from the unnecessary exposure, such as respiratory droplets, body fluids. And one of those items that we're trying to do is to reduce the potential for medical responders to be exposed to the COVID-19 by replacing manual CPR or chest compressions as we do today with mechanical CPR devices, which is what we are making the request for. And this and the next one are certainly justifiable within the interim guidance of basic and advanced life support as provided by the American Heart Association for suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases.
Okay.
And number 5, which would be our last request out of this, would be to purchase 5 automatic external defibrillators and 2 cardiac monitors with AED function. And currently not all of our response vehicles are equipped with the AEDs or the automatic external defibrillators and or serviceable cardiac monitors with that AED function. And so as we talked before, respiratory arrest leads to cardiac arrest, which requires aggressive airway management, those chest compressions, defibrillation. And with COVID incidents increasing, additional response capability along with the EMS equipment, defibrillation seems to be necessary. Also, by upgrading the cardiac monitors allows us for better data collection to assist making patient care decisions in the future. And again, this is certainly justifiable through the American Heart Association. Those are really the 5 areas in which we're trying to do the request. I wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity to present this and understand and appreciate the work that you all have to do. And if there are any questions I can answer, or we have our medical service officer online as well, I would love to entertain those questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lonnie. I've got a 10 o'clock hard deadline here and stuff, so I want to try and get this dealt with before we have to move into our hearing and stuff. So,
yes, sir.
Any questions for the commissioners?
No, I think I'm good. We've seen this, before and have approved these, so I'm good with this.
Okay, Mr. Kearns.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize CARES Act funding up to the amount of $248,200 to cover the coronavirus related expenses as presented by Spokane County Fire District 8.
I will second that.
A motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rash. And
Thank you.
so that then gets us to 10 o'clock hearing on our levy for 2021. And for this then, Mr. Amacio, are you going to lead us through this, or is Mr. Petrovich?
Chairman French, I'm going to start off. I've asked Mr. Valencia to put on the board's overhead the agenda that I propose that we use this morning in conjunction with this particular item. And Commissioner Chairman French, I think that's on right in front of you, the top left-hand side. And I apologize to the board members. Unfortunately, I was hoping to have this agenda sent out to the board Friday, but unfortunately, it wasn't sent out. So I've had Ron place it on the overhead. And additionally, board members, it was sent to you earlier this morning, so you'd have your own copy in case you wanted to print it out. And so as Chairman French indicated, the item which we're holding our public hearing on is entitled, "In the matter of considering, parens 1, increasing the tax revenue from 2020 for 2021, and parens 2, finding a substantial need as provided for under RCW 8455-0101 in order to discharge the expected expenses and obligations of Spokane County in conjunction with the general fund, the road fund, and the Conservation Futures Fund." I would indicate, Chairman French, that in addition to my presence here today, we have your budget manager, Mr. Petrovich, and his staff. And additionally, I have on the phone Mr. Dave Loomer and Mr. James Havermill. They are levy specialists in the assessor's office. And in the event we need any comments from them on the public hearing item, they will be more than happy to help us. As the board is aware, in adopting our 2021 budget, it's basically a two-step process. Firstly, we have to determine how much revenue we have available in 2021. And then once we determine the amount of money we have available, we can set the budget taking into consideration that funding. The county receives funding from several sources. One of the biggest sources is our property tax. And so the purpose of this morning's public hearing is for the Board of County Commissioners to determine if they want to collect more revenue in 2021 that was collected in 2020 in conjunction with our general fund, in conjunction with our road levy, and in conjunction with our conservation futures. State law provides that the Board of County Commissioners can increase the amount it collects in any subsequent year by a number termed the limit factor. And the limit factor is the lesser of 101% or the implicit price deflator. The implicit price deflator is really I want to get the right word here, is really the inflation factor that the federal government comes up with on an annual basis. So the state law basically says that the Board of County Commissioners can increase the amount of revenue in the general fund, the road fund, and conservation futures at the limit factor, which is the lesser of 101% or the implicit price deflator. And the implicit price deflator this year, board members, is 0.60152. So if you look at the state law, it basically says the board can generate more revenue in the general fund, the road fund, and conservation futures in the amount of 0.60152%. The legislature, realizing, however, that that would, in most instances, not generate enough money to pay ongoing expenses, provides that the Board of County Commissioners, by a majority vote, can declare a substantial need. And if they declare a substantial need, instead of raising revenue 0.60152% in the general fund, the road fund, and conservation futures, they can go to 1%. In addition to considering whether or not the Board of County Commissioners wants to raise revenue in the three funds by 1%, staff has also included in the advertised public hearing the shifting, if you will, of banked capacity in the road fund. As the board is aware, in instances where the Board of County Commissioners does not levy the maximum amount they can every year, they can bank that capacity. And then in subsequent years, they can use the capacity in the road fund, or they can shift the bank capacity to the general fund. In the advertised hearing this morning, board members, staff as a placeholder has done the following. Number one, they have increased the amount of revenue to be collected in the general fund by 1%, and that's identified on the screen. That would raise an approximately amount of $637,963.10. Number two, we have proposed increasing the amount in the road fund by the 1%, which would raise an additional $269,333.22. Thirdly, we have recommended increasing the amount in the conservation futures fund by 1%, which would raise an additional $21,427.39. And finally, we have recommended shifting from the road fund banked capacity to the general fund $5,500,000. And by shifting this money from the road fund to the general fund for a 1-year time frame, it could be used for any county purposes. And additionally, in talking with the levy specialists, by shifting it, it would increase the property tax paid by individuals in Spokane County approximately 2 cents for every $1,000 of assessed value. So I'm now going to turn this back over to Chairman French, and I think Chairman French, your budget director is here, and he'd like to share with you how he might propose spending the additional 1% of revenue which I've discussed, as well as the additional $5,500,000 of road fund levy, which can be shifted to the general fund.
Thank you, Mr. Maceo. Mr. Petrovich.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Well, in our initial formation of the 2021 budget, I made the assumption that we would take the 1% property taxes, and they are reflected currently in the latest budget projection that I have for the general fund, which I presented last Tuesday. And those numbers Tuesday reflect a deficit of approximately $6.4 million. Now, if the board wanted to avail themselves of a road levy shift, they can do so, and they have the ability to shift up to $5.5 million. And just as a scenario, I looked at how that would work out in the general fund budget using a ratio of the 5.5 million being shifted in total into the general fund, and then 2 million being transferred out of the general fund back to roads. And under that scenario, under the third column there, we would be looking at a deficit of now only a little less than $3 million. And then in the fourth column, I just presented what the fund balances would look like if you were to fund that $3 million deficit out of general fund funds to arrive at a balanced budget. And this was for illustration purposes only and for discussion by the board. If they so want to do a levy shift, they can do that levy shift in whatever amounts they feel comfortable in terms of remaining in the general funds explicitly for capital projects, and then what goes back to roads.
So, Mr. Petrovich, on the 5.5 million with regard to the shift, does that assume that the road fund 1% is part of the bank capacity, or is that on top of the bank or the 1% that would be in the road fund?
Jim, I'm going to look to you because you were doing the calculations with David Loomer on the 1%. That is probably inclusive, correct, Jim?
That is correct. It is inclusive. That is correct, Chairman French. We're going to increase the amount of revenue collected in the road fund by 1%, and that would stay in the road fund. We're going to then shift the potentially $5.5 million to the general fund. So the 1% still stays with the road fund, Chairman French.
So the question is, if the 1% stays with the road fund, why would that not also then be included as part of the shift amount?
Your question is, could the board shift instead of $5.5 million as projected, potentially 5 million plus the 500,000 plus the shift plus the 1%? That's your question.
Well, so let me rephrase it a different way. In the road fund, if we did not take the 1%, but we banked it, then that bank capacity could then be used as part of the shift, which would actually increase the 5.5 million.
Chairman French, with your permission, I know we've got Mr. Loomer on the phone. May I please ask Mr. Loomer to respond to that inquiry, Chairman French? Dave, did you hear Chairman French's question?
Yes, and I'm looking at the numbers.
His question basically is, can the board shift, in addition to the $5.5 million, the additional 1% that can be raised in the road fund in 2020 for collection in 2020 for collection in 2021, which is an additional 200 some odd thousand, Chairman French?
So let me rephrase the question so that in lieu of taking the 269,000 as 1% of the road fund, could we not bank that capacity and not take the 1% in the road fund as a revenue source for 2021, but by banking that, increase the bank capacity in the road fund and then increase the dollar amount that's available through the shift?
Understood.
Well, okay, right now, there is approximately, let me think, it's just under $6 million of available bank capacity that could be shifted to the general fund if there was no increase in the road levy. So you could bank, you could shift just under $6 million without affecting the road levy. Leaving the road levy at 0%. Anything greater than that, then you would be decreasing the amount of the road levy.
Yeah, so you're still not getting to my question. The question is, if in the road fund for 2021, we banked the 1%. We did not take it, we banked it. So that would increase the amount of bank capacity we have available to us, so that if we shifted that additional 1% to the general fund, it would increase the 5.5 million to another number. And that's what I'm trying to get to. Is that line of logic accurate? And is it also then generate a different number than the 5.5 million?
Can I add something to Commissioner French's question?
Yes, go ahead.
Or do you have to wait till the following year to exercise that banked 1%?
Yep.
Okay, well, let me try to explain this. Bank capacity is not something that you save for future years. Bank capacity is the difference between what you could levy and what you actually levy in any given year. So for 2021, the bank capacity is roughly, like I said, just under $6 million. If you choose not to, choosing not to increase the road levy doesn't really affect next year's bank capacity, because next year's bank capacity will again be the difference between what you're allowed to levy and what you actually levy. So it's really, it's an unused capacity. It's not really something that's banked and put away someplace. So next year, doing a levy shift moves the capacity from the road fund to the general fund, but then in 2022, that capacity will be moved back to the road fund, unless you do another levy shift. So right now, the bank capacity is like I said, we'll just for general purposes, $6 million. And levy shift can be more than excess bank capacity. You could decide to bank or move, say, $6.5 million, but that would reduce the amount the road levy could levy. The road could levy. So roughly the $6 million is excess capacity that the road levy has that can be used in the general fund. But not increasing the 1% just means that you didn't levy for that this year. It doesn't really affect next year.
Chairman,
I
don't know if that makes sense or not.
It doesn't. And so the levy amount that we have in the road fund today is how much? Not by dollar amount, but by percentage. How much levy capacity do we have in the road fund based upon what we have banked to date?
Well, right now, the highest lawful levy for the road fund is $33.6 million. And, that's the limit that the road fund you could levy for. Adding 1%, would then levy for the road fund. Where is that number? Oh, I don't have that number here. Let me do this real quick. Adding 1% would levy roughly $27.2 million. And like I said, the highest lawful is 33. What did I say? 33.6. So the difference is the bank capacity for this year, or the unused. Essentially, it's unused amount of levy that you could, unused amount of money that you could levy but chose not to.
Okay, maybe can I ask the question in a different way? See if I can get there.
Yeah, give her a shot, Mary.
Thanks. Okay, so our current levying amount, if we do 1% in the road fund, is $269,333. Our 1% in the general fund is $637,963. So I guess I think what Commissioner French is trying to get at, if we don't do the 1% in the road fund, we bank it in the road fund and then chose to shift that, because then doesn't it get, the entire county gets taxed that 1% instead of just a smaller portion? So then wouldn't we really be potentially gaining up to that 637,000? I think that's what we're trying to see, if that's the reality.
Yeah, so.
Well, okay. If you chose not to increase the road levy by 1%, and that's the actual levy, if you're including, if you're including a new construction and state assessed, the total road levy would be $27.6 million without the 1%. So the difference between that and the highest lawful is just over $6 million. So you could shift roughly $6 million to the general fund without affecting the road levy. If you choose to add 1%, then that $6 million would be dropped by the 269,000 or whatever. Yeah, 269,000.
So we're basically, so how much would we gain in capacity by not doing the 1% and shifting it all, based on what you just figured?
I think that gets us back to the 637. Or the 1% that
was it about that 369?
Without adding the 1%, your bank capacity would be $6 million for this year.
Yeah. To get to your question, Mary, and nice reshaping of the issue. I tracked that really well, but I think the net difference to the general fund would be an additional, $637,963, which is what the 1% does for us in the general fund. The 1%, whether it comes from the shift from the road fund or comes from the 1% in the general fund, effectively operates the same way. So I think that's the net difference that we would experience.
Okay. See, and I'm thinking it's the 369, the difference between the two. Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, no, I did the same math. I took the 637, took the 269 from it, ended up with the 369. I did the same math you did, and you're right. That would be the additional. But if we're banking the full 1%, it would be the full 637 that would go into the general fund, not the difference between the bank capacity and the road fund and what we otherwise could levy, because your base is larger. And so that's the difference for the bigger number. But I did the same math you did. I agree with you.
So I guess we're trying to figure out, is it better to not take the 1% in roads to then shift it back into roads? That would be their portion.
Yes.
And have the rest for the general fund.
Because if you did exactly what you just said, Mary, the increase to the road fund would be the 369, which is the number we were talking about. The 637 minus the 269 gets us 369. That would be the increase that would go back to the road fund if we did it through the general fund and the shift.
I think so. Yeah.
Chairman French, this is exactly why I asked Mr. Loomer to be present, because this levy issue is very, very complicated, and it's something that neither Gary nor I have the expertise on, and you and Mary have asked the good questions. I'm still confused this. I think the board says we don't want to take the 1% in the road fund. If we don't take the 1% in the road fund, Mr. Loomer, is that amount banked? And if it's banked, we want to, instead of shifting 5.5 million, we want to shift 5.8 million, or you want to add some more to that. Isn't that what you're saying?
Or you could, the shift would actually be, instead of 5.5, it could be 6.1, which represents the 637,000. And then that then could go back into the road fund next year. So we've actually just done the 1%, but we shifted it to get the bigger base and put that total amount back in the road fund. So, you know, instead of the 2 million out of the 5.5 million that Gary is already budgeting, 2 million of that is going to the road fund. With what Mary is talking about, it could actually be 2.6 million going back to the road fund by just handling that through the shift. So we can, so if we took the 1%, we took the 1% in the road fund, our total increase to the road fund budget for next year is $269,000. That's what the 1% generates here.
That'd be bank capacity, because you're not doing it.
No, if we take the 1%
yes.
in the road fund,
yes,
the total increase to the road fund then would be $269,000.
Correct.
But if we took that 1% and shifted it, the increase to the road fund just on that 1% would be the 637, so let's call it 638,000. It's that 1% there. It's different. Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
it's that amount there.
So one of the issues, board members, and I guess it's my error, when we hold these public hearings, I'm required to put the maximum amount of increased revenue that you're considering raising in 2021 over 2020. And Chairman French, I think the budget director and I put in as the maximum placeholder $5.5 million. I didn't put in, Chairman French, 5.8 or 9 or whatever there. So from a legal perspective, I'm not sure that we can shift more than 5.5 million, because that's all we advertised. And remember, we're advertising increasing your revenues by 2 ways. 1, the 1%, and 2, the shift. And so I think it may be problematic to shift, Chairman French, more than the 5.5 million as advertised. And again, that was a placeholder that we put in at the time. And correct me, Mr. Petrovich, at least that was my understanding.
That was the best information we had last week when we were
So, go ahead, Gary.
We have to have 2 weeks that we do this 2 weeks before we adopt the budget.
Commissioner CUNY, I believe it's possible to continue this hearing for, I'm going to say, for a 10-day time frame if we want to increase the amount of the shift, but we have to certify to the assessor's office by November 30th the total amount of tax revenue which we want to levy against, if you will, in 2020 for collection in 2021. So, and answer your question, Mary, if you had a number, that additional number you wanted to shift, we could continue this particular hearing and take testimony on that additional number, but we'd have to make a decision before November 30th, because that's the last day we can certify to the assessor the amount of revenue that we want to collect and levy against to collect in 2021.
But since we are meeting next Monday already, Monday morning, we could continue this hearing to Monday morning next week and then consider what we've been talking about with regard to the shift. Is that right?
Chairman French, I think you're making a correct statement, but if you're going to continue it, I would like to be able to advise right now what the total amount of the shift would be so that people would know next Monday when they come in to testify, Chairman French, what that number is. Because remember, the whole purpose of this hearing is for people to talk about increased revenue to be received in 2021 over 2020. So if we had that number, Chairman French, yes, we could continue it till next Monday. We could continue the hearing for receiving testimony, and then we could take action then. That is correct.
So for your purposes, the number we need to have for next Monday is the cap, not what we'll actually take. But because all we're doing is we're advertising what is the maximum available to us to take. But what that number is in terms of what we actually do is a number yet to be determined.
That is a correct statement, Chairman French.
So for notice purposes, for next Monday, I'm going to throw out for consideration of the other two commissioners that we increase the 5.5 to 6.1 to reflect that additional 1% available by banking the road fund or not using the road fund and using that for the road fund, but using it as a shift. And that would take that dollar amount up to 6.1. And then the board can decide how much of that they want to use. But for notice purposes, all we're trying to do is identify what the ceiling is.
Correct. And then I think we would still notice, in case we choose not to do that, we would still notice the 1% for the road fund, which give us all the options available.
Yes, exactly right.
But can that vote be taken on the 23rd, which is next Monday, or do we have to wait until the 30th for that 10-day notice period?
So because we are continuing this hearing and not starting a new hearing, we avoid that 10-day window with regard to the notice. As long as we take an action before November 30th, I think we're okay as far as the auditor's office. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Maceo?
Chairman French, I think the safest way is to give 10 days notice of the change. Anything less than that could be problematic. And so if I had my druthers in responding to Commissioner Kearns, I would say today's hearing, based upon the numbers that you just alluded to, which would increase the shift to $6.1 million, banking the road capacity that we've talked about. Chairman French, if I had my druthers, I'd prefer to have the hearing 10 days from today, because then there would be no question in my mind. If we take it shorter and make it on next Monday.
Well, we're going to meet on the 30th, so we can deal with it on the 30th.
Are we? I did not know we were meeting, Chairman French, on the 30th. Are we, the clerk?
That's a Monday. Yeah, why wouldn't we meet?
Chairman French, if we're meeting on the 30th, that gives, we can continue this until the 30th. There's no problem with that whatsoever. That satisfies the 10-day time frame for extending this particular issue.
What are your thoughts about that? We just continue this hearing until the 30th.
I'd be okay with that. I mean, because I think we need to vet what this really is and really have everyone figure out what the numbers are and make sure everyone's all on the same page as to what it means. And then we know what the possibilities are to then make a determination whether we're, each one of us, whatever our choice, as what we're willing to do. But I think we need to know what all those possibilities are.
Yeah, because our options available to us, as I see it, is either the shift or budget cutbacks or using reserves. And so, it's a matter of balancing those three elements, or, a combination of two or three of them Commissioner Kearns, your thoughts?
I think there's been a lot of confusion on these numbers, and I think it would be prudent to make sure that those numbers are correct before proceeding.
Okay. Mr. Maceo.
Before, let me see, this is a public hearing, Chairman French.
Yeah, I'm going to open up the hearing.
May I, through you, ask Mr. Loomer a question? Mr. Loomer, you've heard the board's thinking with regard to increasing the potential amount of the shift as a placeholder from 5.5 to $6.1 million. And you've heard the board suggesting that the 1% additional amount in the road fund would be banked, if I'm hearing Commissioner French correctly. Do you see, and assuming we're continuing for that purpose, are those numbers correct numbers based upon what I've just shared to you?
Well, yeah, they're numbers that are doable.
Okay.
I could, I could recalculate the number, the numbers that would be put on the resolution.
We would, of
or
course,
a public hearing.
Yeah, of course, as Commissioner CUNY and Commissioner Kearns said, this is just a placeholder at a higher number. We would ask, of course, that you and Mr. Havermill be available on the continued public hearing date in case the board does something in between, if you will, the 6.1 and whatever number we have, because that will be the final day which we can certify to you the amount that we want to have you collect and levy in 2020 for collection in 2021. We have to have that certification to the assessor's office by the 30th, or we're stuck with what we got last year, which will not be a good thing.
Yes. And
I want to apologize to the board for these numbers, and Commissioner CUNY and Mr. Kearns and Chairman French. This is a complicated issue. Every time we get to the shift, it does create problems, and I'm glad that Mr. Loomer and Mr. Havermill are here to assist us, and I apologize, board members, if we didn't kind of discuss this before the hearing date, Chairman French.
Mary.
So can I suggest, Jim, that we have basically two options, the option that you have in front of us, and then the option of not doing the 1% in the road fund and having the maximum amount as the shift. Is that, since you've got to do, be able to show the public, can it be shown that way as those two options?
We can certainly, with Mr. Loomer's assistance and Mr. Havermill's, we will prepare documents both ways, Commissioner CUNY, just like you've suggested, for the continued public hearing when we set that date and time.
Okay, and then I guess the other question that, since this is a public hearing and having this discussions, and it hasn't really been discussed amongst us, is that, in looking at the road shift, as I stated last year and will state this year, that I need to know I'm only willing to do the road shift if a majority of the money is going back into roads. So last year at the 5.5 million, we had 3 million go back into roads, and we had 2.5 million go to capital projects. And I want to ensure that if we're going to do this, it's not for operating expenses. We have to figure out how we live within our means on our operations side. But we also know that roads does not have enough funding, and how do we help find that funding for them? And so this is, to me, a means of using their funding capacity to help give them those additional funds that they need to keep our community safe on the roads that we have. But knowing that we also have capital items that are one-time capital items that we just can't afford either. And if we don't maintain our assets that we have, then we're not using our public funds appropriately either. So that's why I've been willing to do the road shift, and I'm willing to look at the road shift. But I will be pretty clear that I will only look at the road shift if over 50% of that money is going back into roads.
Okay. Mr. Kearns, your thoughts, or you good? Okay. So,
Chairman French, may I say one thing, Chairman French?
Sure.
Two things before you open your public hearing. Firstly, Commissioner Cuney, I understand your statements that you just made, being that you would not support the road levy shift unless a majority of it goes back to the roads department and the remaining portion is used for capital improvements, if I understood you correctly.
Yes.
And I would, generally speaking, I would not put that in this resolution. That type of terminology would be in the budget adoption that Mr. Petrovich is talking about. At least, so I want to be sure that I understand. Would you want me to add a note?
I'm not expecting that to be in the resolution. I'm just stating that in order for me to vote in favor of the road shift, those are the things that would need to be in place that are budgetary items, are not a resolution item.
Okay, and thank you.
And again, that's just my fellow commissioners can, have other opinions and all of that, so it's, that's just my opinion on agreeing to do the road shift.
And Chairman French, one further statement that I forgot to make in conjunction with this particular hearing. The reason why staff is recommending the 1% increase in the amount of revenue collected in the general fund, the road fund, and conservation futures is for several reasons. And I think some of them has been articulated in some of the budget discussions, but I'd like to just mention them briefly. Firstly, there's an increase in the employer retirement contributions toward the Washington State administered public retirement system for county employees. Secondarily, there's an increase in the employer contributions toward health care plans provided to county staff. Thirdly, there's the implementation of certain unfunded mandates that the board's aware of. For example, the 5-commissioner bill, which starts on January 1st, and also the Uniform Guardianship and Conservatory and Protective Arrangements Act, where the court has to provide certain legal counsel for individuals. And so it's because of all those unique funding items plus others that staff is recommending that the board strongly consider going the increase of 1%, if you will, in the 3 funds that we've talked about. So anyway, I wanted to be sure that was part of the record, board members, and I apologize, Chairman French. I think I'm through commenting, and I'll turn the matter back over to you.
One of the other things that we've done in the past that I think has been very helpful is a spreadsheet that shows what the dollar amount is per average household as a result of levying these taxes. I think that's been very helpful in the past to understand that, even when you're doing the shift and putting money back into the road fund, by doing it through the shift, it's actually cheaper for the taxpayers overall than it is by doing the 1% in the road fund and then finding ourselves both underfunding and also increasing taxes. So I think that spreadsheet would be very helpful to show the different scenarios.
And I've spoken with Tom Konis, and he has said that is something he can produce.
Good. Excellent. Okay.
Because I agree. I think that's helpful, and I think it's helpful for the citizens to understand and see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think Mr. Michio alluded to is like 20 cents per 100,000. But I mean, it's just better to see it as what's the average home and what does it really mean to the average family.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so are we ready to open up the public hearing? So we're going to open it up for comments, but since this is going to be continued, the motions that have so well been articulated by Mr. Amacio, we will not be doing any of the motions today. All we'll be doing is taking comment. And then we'll continue the matter to November 30th. Okay? Are we all okay with that? All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up the comment, public hearing for the 2021 county levy hearing. Give each individual that wants to provide any testimony on the hearing items to give them 3 minutes apiece. Please just speak to the motion or to the hearing item, and I will let you know when your time has expired. So who would, I see a couple people that are on the
All staff, or
those are all staff?
or for CARES.
Okay, or for CARES funding. Okay, so I'll just call for anybody who wants to provide any testimony on county levy hearing as presented by staff. Second call for anybody who'd like to provide any testimony on the hearing items before the Board of County Commissioners. Third and final call for anybody wanting to provide testimony. Seeing nobody come forward with testimony, I will continue this hearing until Monday, November 30th at 10 a.m. Okay, Mr. Maceo.
Thank you, Chairman French. And the purpose of the continued hearing will be to take additional comments and public testimony on increasing the proposed shift as originally advertised from 5.5 million to 6.1 and banking the road capacity as originally identified. If I've said that accurately, Chairman French?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was entertaining. But no, the fun is not over. We're going to go back to CARES funding.
We had a motion, no second.
Had a motion for what?
To continue it till 8:30. I don't think we seconded it, did we?
Well, I don't think there was a motion to second. I just continued the hearing.
Okay.
I don't think I need a motion to continue the hearing. I'm
Well,
the chair.
In consensus, that will work.
Yeah, by consensus.
Thank you, Chairman French. By consensus, we'll continue this to the date and time identified with the changes noted. Thank you for your patience.
Very good. So getting back to our list of CARES funding, thank you, Jim. Next item is Family Promise, and Joe Hatter, are you here? Here you are.
Down there.
So
I'm here, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to be here.
yeah, so just so that everybody knows, we've got a hard stop at 11 o'clock. So be brief and so that we can get through these all this morning. And so go ahead, Mr. Hatter.
Okay. I believe you guys will be clicking my slides because they just put the screen up there. But as you know, Family Promises Spokane, we serve homeless families in Spokane County. And we serve a lot of them. It's a growing area of our homeless population. 1 in 25 students last year became homeless at some point during the school year, which is about a little bit over 3,000 people. And so those family units are probably account for about 12,000 in our county last year. This is before COVID. So Family Promise, we work to equip those families to end the cycle of homelessness. We do that by preventing them from becoming homeless in the first place, providing shelters for families that are experiencing homelessness, and then preparing them for a stable life afterwards. With COVID, we've had a lot of preparation and response going into it. You can fast forward the slide there for me. So even going back to last year, we identified the risks that COVID might have, even looking at that in December of 2019, so 3 months before it got here. But in March, we were the first agency to enact a COVID response plan in the county. So we paused our rotational shelter, which shelters families in local churches at night, to prevent the risk of spread amongst the church congregants, most of whom are seniors. We paused all shelter volunteers. We created our own isolation spots for our families with camper trailers in our parking lot. We also opened up 2 quarantine apartments with Naomi to try to quarantine folks that were experiencing any symptoms of illness. And then we implemented social distancing, mask wearing, enhanced sanitation, daily temperature checks, and then required all non-essential staff to work from home since March. The biggest thing that we did, though, was to keep our capacity at 60 individuals a night. We opened a second 24/7 family shelter location, which could house up to 15 families per night. And we pretty much moved the folks that had family members with weakened immune systems to that second location to try to keep them away from the larger homeless population. And that worked really well for almost 9 months. And then on November 5th, so Thursday a week ago, we had our first guest, which tested positive for COVID. We immediately isolated them in an apartment, contacted Spokane Regional Health District, and then isolated 2 more families and 3 staff while they were being tested. 2 of those came back positive and 1 staff member came back positive. By Sunday the 7th, we had 12 new positive cases and a new positive staff member. And then by today, 34 of 37 guests are positive in those 2 staff members. No other staff members have tested positive since a week ago. So it definitely spread throughout the shelter in that first week that it got to us. Basically, it looks like somebody contracted it sometime around Halloween. And then that first week, pretty much it got to everybody that was in the open door shelter. So the entire shelter has been a quarantine site for the past week, and we'll quarantine for another additional week. And then we will begin with the health department, the reopening process for the family shelter, the Open Doors Family Shelter. The second shelter site location was unaffected. It has its own staff and its own guests that are there that do not come back and forth between the facilities. So that has worked well, even with the main shelter being hit pretty heavy there. So you can fast forward or advance the slide, please. So we will be doing that phase reopening, but since March, our costs to prepare for COVID have been $167,932. Most of that is staffing costs for that second site, that second shelter site. And then we are anticipating $51,055 in expected additional costs for November and December, with about 11,000 of that being cleaning coming out of this COVID spell that we've had, as well as purchasing new air purifiers and heat system to heat up the mattresses that the families sleep on to kill any virus that is there. And so altogether, our request to you all is $218,987 that are unbudgeted funds that we have spent towards our COVID response in preparation.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Adder, Barry?
I don't really have any questions. I'll just comment that, you know, you guys definitely had to kind of become your own isolation unit. I know that, you know, there's a few little select, you know, nonprofits out there that have had to do that. I think Daybreak was one of those too. And so, so I understand I'm for this funding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Kearns.
I have no questions. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to move to approve and authorize the expenditures of CARES dollars up to the amount of $219,000 to accommodate the coronavirus related expenses as presented by Joe Adder from Family Promise today.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any word conversation, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Adder.
Carol.
Thanks for
Thank
all
you
you're
all
doing
very
as
much.
well. All right,
Thank you so
next
much.
up, Carol. Partners with Families and Children.
Yes, this is Carol. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we've got
There we
your
go.
presentation and stuff, and we are pushing 11 o'clock timeline. We've got you and one other application. So you can give us the 50,000 foot look.
I will do that. I will fly. So very briefly, Partners with Families and Children, we are a nationally accredited children's advocacy center, the only one here in Spokane County. We serve children who have been abused in some way. We have the forensic interviews, medical exams to diagnose abuse, advocacy, mental health services. We also offer mental health and substance use disorder services for parenting adults. So that is very brief in a nutshell who we are, what we do. What we have asked for here is funding purely for PPE and cleaning costs, basically to continue operations. We are an essential business. We have remained open. Our behavioral health services are remote, but our children's advocacy services are in person. And we have not had any COVID outbreak, which has been wonderful, knock on wood, but we do need to continue all of our safe practices, and we are running very low and need to restock up on our PPE. So that is in a nutshell what we are asking for. And you see our grand total cost here of basically $23,000.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any questions for Carol?
Would we like to connect Carol with Tony from our purchasing department to make sure they're getting the best price?
Might not be a bad idea in terms of going forward. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Chair, I'd like to approve and authorize CARES dollars to be expended up to the amount of $23,100 to facilitate the COVID-related expenses as presented by Partners with Family and Children, and also to connect Carol with Tony Hall from our purchasing department to make sure they're getting the best price possible on their PPE expenditures.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Carol, for all you're doing.
Thank you very much.
All right, so next up, Mike Furness, Ronald McDonald House Charities. You're up, sir. Got to unmute yourself.
There we go.
All right.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. As you know, we've continued to service families through the whole COVID time period here. We did submit for funding for the expenses that we have not been able to cover with other donations. And we are excited that that we've been able to continue to provide service. We are in our new facility, for those of you that've seen it up on the hill here, and it really allowed us to have greater space, greater capacity. So we've had 2 positive COVID exposures, and both of them were identified within a day, and there was no secondary transmission. So we've been very fortunate there. But the extra cost to keep the building sanitized for 50 to 60 people living 24/7, we've submitted. And the cost through the end of the year is estimated to be a little over $50,000. We did receive $10,000 from the GSI Innovia funds, which I think were from the CARES Act for the county. And so we're submitting the balance of those up to $40,000. I don't know what the remainder is on there. I'm remote right now, but we would really appreciate consideration, and we want to continue to provide these services safely to families that come from a 4-state area to Spokane to get specialized medical services.
Yes, thank you, sir. And the dollar amount that we have on the application is $40,316.80. So any questions for Mike? Okay, Chair's open to motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to approve and authorize the expenditures of CARES dollars up to the amount of $40,400 to cover the COVID-related expenses for the Ronald McDonald House of Charity of the Inland Northwest as presented today.
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all you're doing for the community. So that completes all the published items coming before the board. Any other miscellaneous items that either one of you want to bring up? Mr.
I just wanted to point out for Gina on the for this week's agenda, we have an STA board meeting that needs to be noticed. And then Commissioner French, do we have an SRLJC admin committee this week?
Yes.
Then that needs to be noticed as well.
Yep.
So STA and SRLJC admin are missing from our weekly calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns.
Yep.
Barry, you're muted. Barry, you're muted.
And then are people doing the GSI economic forecast? I think that's tomorrow morning at 8.
It's already noticed.
The COVID recovery meeting?
No, GSI economic forecast meeting is also tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah, they overlap though.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great.
I did notify Amelia that we might not be at the COVID relief meeting tomorrow morning, so she's aware of that.
I was planning on being there, so
I'll be there too.
I'll go to that one.
All right, very good.
Okay.
That's all the business coming before the board. It is now 11 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you.
John and I will see you at 1:30 out.